Amidst the city's chaos, news flashes everywhere. The nation's most charming charlatan has finally been revealed. A secret tip said he duped 30% of us, pocketing 100 billion. But oh, that was just for starters. Investigators found he'd been hustling since he was a kid. Now he's on the lam, completely off the radar. Nobody knows if Han Jun Wu, 35, is even legit. A masked man in the crowd watched the news, grumbling. Of all my pictures, they used times that times one flashback, 30 years. A tiny Han Jun Wu shook as a strange man interrogated him, demanding to know if he'd swiped something. Through tears, Jun Wu swore he saw nothing. The man freaked, looking around. Time to bolt. He had no business in this fancy daycare for rich kids. He was single. What on earth was he even doing here? Let's rewind a few moments. Our guy accidentally bumps into a lady. Her wine glass teeters on the brink, but doesn't spill. In that split second, he'd already lifted the ring from her finger. She actually apologized to him and went on her merry way. He couldn't believe his own slickness, nabbing it right under her nose. But then, karma had other plans. The ring fumbled from his grasp and rolled right to the feet of little Han Jun Wu. Back to the current crisis. The man's eyes widened. It's the kid the ring rolled to. He sized the boy up, who looked totally and utterly clueless. The kid wailed, swearing his innocence. The man started to sweat. A crying kid is a magnet for unwanted attention. He figured he'd ditch the kid and keep looking for the ring. But just then, a woman spotted the weeping boy. "Who is this child? He doesn't belong here," she said, eyeing him suspiciously. Her question hit the man like a ton of bricks. How could she ask that? She then asked if he was the boy's dad. He denied it instantly, but then his brain caught up. Telling the truth would be bad. In a total panic, he sputtered that his real-time son was around here somewhere. He paused, thinking, what am I even saying just then? Han Jun Wu latched onto his leg with a tight hug, crying daddy, and vowing he'd never ask for toys again. He pleaded with him, "Please don't leave me." The man was completely stunned. Why is this kid calling me that, he wondered. The women nearby started whispering to each other, gossiping that he'd probably ditched the poor kid. Others muttered about people trying to sneak into these fancy schools. The man, totally cornered. He scooped up Han Jun Wu with a strained smile. Playing the dad, he tried to soothe the boy with happy words, and made a swift exit with the kid in tow. The second they were outside, he demanded, "All right. Who are you?" "Really?" Jun Wu just blinked innocently. "What do you mean?" When the man pressed him about the whole dad thing, Yun Wu said, "You started it first." The man denied it, but Jun Wu called his bluff, saying, "I saw the whole thing." That accusation rattled the man. Jun Wu then grinned and asked, "So, is our game over?" The man, baffled. I asked, "What game?" Jun Wu answered with a cheeky little smirk. "The game we were just playing together. It was pretty fun." "Right." Intrigued. The man asked for the kid's name and where his parents were. Jun Wu just smiled and said he didn't have any, adding, "You kinda look like you don't have a home, either." The man asked how he survived, and Jun Wu shrugged, explaining he just lays low and waits for other parents to show up for their kids. No one ever notices. No one cared, as long as he seemed adoptable. With a flourish, Young Wu whipped the stolen ring out of his pocket, crowning himself the champ of their little game. The guy was floored. Just a second ago, this kid swore he was innocent. Then it clicked. This kid had bamboozled the great Go-Il Nam himself, all while playing the part of a kindergartner. And he was only 5 or 6 years old. Jun Wu saw the panic on the man's face and totally called him out on it, saying he was just as scared of him. The man freaked, rattled by his own feelings. Was he really scared of a 5-year-old kid? Then, like he was surrendering, he asked Jun Wu if he wanted to tag along with him. And on that very day, Han Jun Wu got his very first family, a lad named Go-Nam. Il-Nam took Jun Wu home where 3 other dudes were just hanging out. Little did Jun Wu know, besides Go-Il-Nam, He'd hit the dad jackpot with 3 more. They all watched a movie together that night. On the TV, a kid was crying his eyes out, begging for help, saying he was an orphan. Jung Woo, all curious, asked what the TV people were up to. Il-nam said it was his favorite game. One of the guys asked if Jun Woo wanted to play that game as well. Il-nam instantly protested, saying it wasn't cool. But before he could even finish, Jun Woo eagerly said he was totally in. Later that night, on some corner, Jung Woo went up to a man crying and pleading for help. He claimed his mom and brother were super sick. The guy, totally sold, gave him a huge wad of cash. Jung Woo grabbed the cash and passed it to another member of the con crew, one of his dads. He explained how the guy fell for it and paid up. Then, with a grin, he asked what his next acting gig was. The man just stared in awe, then cracked a smirk. From then on, Jun Woo dove headfirst into his dad's schemes. Every single one of their operations was a smash hit. Eventually, Jun Woo started masterminding the cons. He got a real kick out of watching people buy his stories. It felt like he had the whole world on a string. He wasn't just part of the family anymore. He was a full-fledged partner in crime. Years went by. Jun Woo grew up and one day yelled at one of his dads, livid that he'd totally botched the job. He'd told him to stay away from that specific con. But his dad shot back, saying it was 100 billion. How could he just let that slide? He never thought it'd all go sideways. Another dad asked Jun Woo if there was any magic escape plan, banking on his big brain. But Jun Woo told them, nope. To not chance. It was game over. In a total panic, one of his dads grabbed his collar, pleading for a miracle. If they got nabbed again, it was curtains for the whole crew. He begged, reminding Jun Woo he was their boy. They needed him. They couldn't make a clean getaway without him. Go Nam gently put a hand on Jun Woo's shoulder and said not to sweat it. Maybe it was time they finally hung up their hats. Jun Woo figured getting caught might not be the worst thing. He was getting pretty sick of the whole scamming gig anyway. He'd stumbled into this life without really getting it. But over time, he was filled with regret. A totally useless feeling. He was over all of it. Dads blinded by dollar signs. A life of dodging the law. Maybe this really was the grand finale. In the slammer, Jun Woo got some serious grief from other inmates, still mulling over the regrets and the void of his past. Then just like that, he woke up. Right in front of him, Goil Nam had crumpled to the floor, held up by another dad. Il Nam grinned, saying he took a tumble but the chicken was saved from certain doom. He told Jun Woo to eat fast. High school was just around the corner, so he should eat up now. At those words, Jun Woo just froze. Mind blown. A high schooler, for real, now. He sat there quietly as one of his dads pointed at the board, explaining their next big scheme at Senu Middle School. First, they'd play dress up as thugs and lurk somewhere. After school, Jung Woo would play his part. But while they were plotting this masterpiece, his dad saw Jung Woo was totally zoned out. Annoyed, he snapped at him, asking why he wasn't tuning in. Lawson figured Jung Woo was thinking, wait, is this that gig from 20 years ago? He then faced his dads and detailed the whole scheme. The principal would totally trust them if a partner's son enrolled in his fancy school. How he'd escort the principal to some dusty old hotel to get him to sign a bogus contract. And then, they'd bait the principal to a spot where Jung Sununwan and Park Young-sik would be playing dress-up as tough guys. The mere thought of mob ties would scare the principal into backing out of the deal. And then they'd swoop in for a nice cancellation fee. Hearing Jun Woo's know-it-all tone, one of his dads totally flipped out, shocked by his sheer nerve. But Jun Woo coolly said he didn't have a major role in their plan and just stood up to leave. As he walked away, Ilm wondered how Jun Woo knew details they hadn't even decided on. Another dad remarked that Jun Woo was just a natural-born con artist, admitting he'd chalked up Jun Woo's weird moodiness to puberty. As the dads kept chatting, one of them started getting a little suspicious. Watching Jun Woo and remembering what he'd said before, he quietly started putting the pieces together. Another dad remarked, Jun Woo always charges ahead like a beast the second he senses a prime opportunity. Ilnam then brought up that one incident, asking if the others had ever caught the people from that job. But they just replied that it was all taken care of. Meanwhile, Jun Wu was totally listening in from just outside. He ducked into the bathroom and stared at his own reflection. And it confirmed his wildest suspicion. That whole conversation he just heard, he remembered it perfectly. A job they had pulled off ages ago. He'd been mulling it over for days. But now he knew for sure. He had actually gone back in time, after 35 years on Earth. He was a middle schooler again. Both things were real. But now that he was back, he absolutely couldn't go through all that again. That was the big issue. And right then, one of his dads, the very same one who was getting suspicious, cornered Jun Wu in the bathroom and gave him papers for the gig they had planned for next week. Jun Wu glanced at them. Admitting this job was a big deal. His dad just told him he could pull it off by himself, so Jun Wu agreed, saying it was a pretty big job, and a risky one at that. His dad just shrugged it off, saying, "Every gig we pull has some risk." Jun Wu thought to himself that this was so Jane Jamu. The guy was always the first to bolt if a plan went south. Unlike his three other dads, Kim Guangsu, Lisha, and Go Il-nam, he wasn't really family. Jun Wan then asked if Jun Wu was getting cold feet. Jun Wu insisted he was fine. Just peachy. But Janu noted that with the principal now in the loop, things got tricky. Jun Wu had to stay put. No field trips. And definitely no new unauthorized friends on his approved list. He stressed they were his only true family. His only home. And poof. He was gone. Jun Wu stared, replaying his life's blooper reel. He'd pulled off a zillion perfect jobs. Nothing ever went south on his watch. Not once. Not a single time. Except for one epic fail pleasing the fathers. They'd programmed him, using him like a cash machine. He was just there walking, talking piggy bank. Which is why they couldn't have him getting famous. They were terrified he'd pick up the dangerous habit of thinking and bolt. But there was one guy who actually gave a damn. He recalled Gollum's advice, "Don't follow our sketchy path, kid." The man had even offered him an escape route, told him he could just walk away. Back then, a furious Jun Wu had screamed that he would never, ever quit. He demanded why his dad kept saying that. He'd cried out that he loved this job, then wailed, "Is it because you hate me?" But now, oh, he got it. Go Il-nam was just trying to save his dumb butt. Another memory popped up, Go Il-nam saying life wasn't a one-way street. When Jun Wu asked for examples, Il-nam pitched being an office drone or a counselor, said Jun Wu had a way with words. He even brought up acting, reminding Jun Wu of his love for the stage. Jun Wu just smirked then. A soft smile, snapping back to now. Jun Wu's daydream ended when Il-nam walked in. Seeing his gloomy face, Il-nam's cure was simple. "Let's go get barbecue." There they were, over a bubbling pot of anchovy stew. Il-nam grinned, noting Jun Wu finally liked the stew he once despised, but he paused. His dad's senses tingling, and asked if Jun Wu had something on his mind. Jun Wu met his gaze and said, "Yeah, I'm gonna die." We cut to the school. A teacher telling Class 2 and Class 3 to get in a line. Of course, not all the students are present. Deeply frustrated, the teacher demands to know where everyone is. Some kids pipe up, saying it's day 1 of the retreat and the weather is just awful. The teacher then yells for Jun Wu, asking if he's gracing them with his presence. Jun Wu replies he is on his way. The teacher checks if all Class 2 students are accounted for, reminding them to please pay attention to the instructor. Jun Wu gets a text from his dad, telling him to have a safe and fun trip. The teacher rushes them, shouting, "Get on the bus. People, we have 0 time left." He tells them on arrival they'll make 3 lines. Just like this. And then, the sky opens up and starts to pour. Before long, the students get to the retreat, cut to the retreat instructor in his room, thinking what a pain these kids are every single time. Then, he pops open a box of confiscated booze with a wicked little smirk, muttering that this is the one and only perk of the job. He grumbles that the kids can't hold their liquor but have expensive taste. He debates sharing with teacher Yule tonight. Or maybe with Hyanu. Just then, Jamu busts the door open, storming in. He's muttering angrily, annoyed he can't get a decent nap with those noisy kids. The instructor, startled, demands to know who dares to just waltz in like that. Jamu coolly asks who this guy is. The instructor, aghast, sputters that Jamu is questioning the master of this domain. Jamwoo, totally unfazed, says the head teacher banished him, irritated and too cool to nap with the other kids. Youngwoo announces he'll just crash here instead. Enraged, the instructor demands his name and class, then grabs his collar, yelling he'll teach him a lesson before he tattles to his homeroom teacher. Jungwoo slaps away the instructor's hand and snaps back, asking who gave this clown permission to touch him. He dares him to call the teacher, mocking that his dad and uncles just gave the last one a rare education. He smirks, daring him to make that call. The instructor, completely stunned, wonders what middle schooler has ink and if Youngwoo's family is connected. Sensing his panic, Youngwoo smirks and sprawls on the sofa like he owns it, telling the instructor to drop the tough guy act and just scram. He says go ahead, run and tell a teacher if he's got the guts. The instructor mutters he doesn't actually know Jungwoo's name, but says they'll know if they ask the homeroom teacher for class 20-5. Furious, he storms off, vowing his revenge. Jamu watches him bolt and thinks, wow, that was way too easy. His eyes catch the beer and smokes in the room and he gives a wicked little smirk. The instructor scrambles to Jungwoo's homeroom teacher, spilling the whole story. The homeroom teacher is confused, saying Junwoo is a quiet kid in class, not one to ever cause any trouble. The instructor insists Junwoo boasted his dad was a gangster and had tattoos. The teacher is skeptical, saying if that was really true, they would have spotted them in gym class. They decide to check the duty room, but when they get there, Junwoo has totally vanished. The homeroom teacher picks up the scent of booze and smokes in the air. The instructor immediately gets defensive, swearing he didn't touch anything. But the teacher just points to the table, littered with empty beer bottles and open cigarette packs. The flustered instructor keeps insisting he didn't drink. The teacher calmly says he knows, and their priority is finding Jungwoo. Meanwhile, in a much more dramatic scene, we find Junwoo posing at a cliff's edge in the pouring rain. Below him, a very dramatic, deep river. He gazes down, thinking his little performance is finally over. The water rages below, but he's a statue. He thought he'd feel some kind of relief. Even though it was all just an act, being on the edge gives him this really weird buzz. He'd told himself he was the star of his own movie this whole time. But really, he was just an extra. A fake. A total delinquent. Sticking around just meant reruns of the same old boring show. For him, today was the perfect day for a grand exit. The instructor and homeroom teacher finally show up, yelling at Junwoo that it's super dangerous and he's gonna totally fall. They plead with him to come back, but Junwoo tunes them out. He jumps. In his head, he whispers, "All right, that's a wrap. Time to roll the credits. Time to escape the producers." And this backstory where I was such a hot mess. Suddenly, 19 port. It minus some guy storms in, furious about the news. The talent, who were so hard to book, have apparently skipped town again. We even doubled their fee since they were coming from so far away. And beside him, his assistant said the show was in just 5 hours and asked what to do. The man, fuming, told him to refund every ticket buyer right away. He told him to tally up the lodging and travel costs and just send them the bill. His assistant suggested suing for damages, asking why the boss always had to clean up their messes, but the man shot that down, saying actors from small theaters are always broke. He said to get the customer info and send short apology texts. No sub-stories. And with that, he stormed out of the room. The kid muttered that his boss was way too nice, but a truly good guy. As the man walked on down the hall, his mind was just buzzing with thoughts about trust. He remembered his past. 5 years ago, Jumansik had been a hotshot in the National Assembly. At just 45, he was a rising star, a real household name, but all that success made him blind. Everyone around him tried to cash in: friends, colleagues, even the ones he trusted most. Every last one of them betrayed him. Caught in petty power games, he lost his grip. By the time he finally saw it, trumped-up corruption charges had destroyed his name, and everyone had abandoned him. Alone and ashamed, he just walked away from politics. He started a new business, full of naive hope. This little theater was it. 5 years went by. But the road was a real grind. At first, it actually got some buzz, even though it was out in the sticks. It got popular by casting total unknowns over big-name actors. Jumansik knew real talent was in the acting, not the hype. He focused on raw talent and found so many hidden gems. His theater became a hotbed for discovering the next big thing. But that success was fleeting. Those actors dreamed of the big time. Once they got famous, they'd bolt for bigger companies. This was the third time this had happened. He wondered if the problem was him, or if the world was just messed up. Back in the present, he remembered he'd left a recording on. As he swung open the theater door, he saw a kid sitting inside. Again, the kid had been showing up like clockwork around this time. He looked like a high schooler, but in a work uniform. Every time, he'd leave a few bucks after watching the shows. In a place where even regulars were a myth, this kid was the only one who ever came back. Curious, Jumansik finally asked for his name. The boy half turned and said he didn't have a name. Turns out, this was Han Jun Wu, our hero. Then Jumansik's brow furrowed, thinking that was a weird answer. Even the stray dog has a name. He asked how old the kid was, and if he even went to school. Jun Wu said he was 17 and didn't go to school. He added that since no one had kicked him out yet, he figured it was okay to watch. Jumansik quickly said he wasn't scolding him. Jun Wu got up to leave. But then he remembered something. He held out some cash, saying he really enjoyed the show. Even though it was a bummer, it ended halfway through. Jumansik told him he wasn't asking for money. Then he spotted Jun Wu's hurt hand and asked about it. Jun Wu said he'd patch it up later and thanked him for noticing. He snatched his hand back and said goodbye. As Jun Wu walked off, Jumansik called out. He asked if plays were the only thing he liked. Inside were recordings and scripts. But he stopped. The way he said it sounded oddly suspicious, like a creep offering candy to a kid. He switched gears, and invited Jun Wu in for a quick fix-up before he left. Later, at a dinner, they watched Jun Wu chow down. Jumanik admitted he was shocked. The kid actually tagged along. Jun Wu said he reminded him of someone he once knew, Jumanik. Finding that dull, asked why he worked such a job. He was still young and handsome. Jun Wu simply replied that we all have our own battles to fight. Jun Wu spotted a paper in Jumanik's hand and got curious. It was a script called A Chance Encounter. Jumanik passed it over, telling him to take a look. Jun Wu took the script and started to read. He was lost in the pages, totally into it. Jumanik quickly snatched it back, saying it was top secret and he couldn't see it all. He watched Jun Wu quietly. He'd casually shown the script, figuring some kid from the sticks wouldn't get it. But the kid devoured it with such focus that Jumanik yanked it back on impulse. He started getting nervous, wondering if he'd been a bit too careless. Jun Wu thanked him for the peek. Jumanik then asked for his thoughts. Jun Wu said he couldn't tell if it'd be a hit, since he's no expert. Jumanik was not having any of that. He'd poured his soul into that script. It was from a writer who obsessed over every single perfect line. He asked Jun Wu if the whole romance thing was the problem. Jun Wu said it wasn't the genre. It was just the wrong stage for this particular play. He pointed out a detail that caught his attention. From the second line on the first page, it said, "Their movement set the scene with a casual rhythm, hinting at a typical school morning vibe." Then, the first lines hit. One girl brought up Gio's ideal guy, then shot the idea down right away. They commented that Gio didn't seem to have a consistent type. All the people she had dated so far had zero similarities and no common thread between them. As the girls kept walking, a new player entered the scene. Kyu Yonggu entered from the other side of the stage, umbrella in hand. His timing and placement created this perfect visual crossroads, setting the stage for the big moment. Jun Woo recited the lines exactly from the script. Kyu Yonggu said something cheeky about a boyfriend nearby. Then came the reply, asking what on earth he meant, followed by a complaint that the umbrella was blocking the view. Kyu Yonggu's response wasn't with words, but with a simple gesture. He slowly raised his umbrella, revealing his face. A simple move, but filled with so much quiet drama. The second his face was shown, the three girls, Jang, Tiju, and Eugene, all reacted at once. Their faces were pure, comical shock, adding a fun, subtle tension to the moment. Jumanik just stared at Jun Woo, stunned. He glanced down at his script. Every single word was perfect. He'd only shown him that page for a minute. Yet this kid remembered every line. Even the stage notes. Jumanik was frozen, totally in disbelief. Was this kid for real? It was barely a minute. Jumanik stared at the stage plans, trying to get what Jun Woo was on about. But before he could even form a sentence, Jun Woo started to pick apart every single flaw in the scene with stunning accuracy. He cited the specific script moment where the trio meets, stressing how their lines should feel like a natural dance, a flowing romance. Junggu laid it out for 30 seconds of sweet nothings. They'd need to take about 20 steps. A romantic stroll. Right, but with a stage only 13 steps wide. Their stroll would be a cramped, awkward, and totally unromantic shuffle. The audience would feel the fakery. The romantic spell would shatter. Oh. But he was just getting warmed up. Junggu added that with them holding umbrellas. And we're not talking about dainty little parasols either, but huge, artsy ones that would turn the lighting into an absolute romantic train wreck. Bright lights would bounce off those things, throwing spooky shadows everywhere. You wouldn't even be able to see their loving faces, their flirtatious looks gone. All that romantic dialogue would just die in the shadows. And it gets worse with the hero's big entrance, Junggu said. Our leading man, who's meant to be a heartthrob, would be hidden by his own umbrella. That one big heart-stopping moment, it would land with a thud. Instead of a gasp-worthy entrance, they'd just sneak on stage. The audience would be too busy yawning to even notice. But Junggu wasn't just a critic, he was a romantic hero with a plan. Forget the boring old path to school, he said. He suggested a bus stop. A classic spot where young lovers wait and dream every day. This spot feels real. Lets our lovebirds stay put and flirt without any of that awkward shuffling. No more forced marches. No weird pacing. The umbrellas stay still. The lighting is perfect. And that big entrance, it's a guaranteed showstopper now. His voice was so calm, so sure. Junggu just laid it all out with pure, sexy logic. He knew these little things were the difference between magic and a mess. Every moment mattered. Meanwhile, Jumansik, who'd been totally silent, was floored. He was speechless. He just stared at Junggu, his jaw on the floor. What could he even say? Junggu's breakdown was perfect, and Junggu just kept going with this cool, quiet confidence. He explained how his idea gave them a perfect excuse to just stand there and be charming. It let their witty banter flow without chopping a single word. As he pictured the scene playing out in his head, he painted a picture of a mysterious man with an umbrella crashing their little party. This guy slowly aims it at the audience. For a second, he totally blocks our view of one of the actors. It's a simple, ingenious move. A little visual tease. It makes the audience crazy curious. They'd all lean forward, dying to know what's going on behind there. In the end, it would feel like a huge, dramatic movie moment. Then, Junggu stopped. Suddenly looking a little bit flustered, he quickly told himself to ignore that stroke of genius. Brushing it off, he mumbled quietly that it might be a bit too ambitious, but Jumansik was totally hooked now. He looked at Junggu, eyes wide, and asked him if he had any more bright ideas. Junggu, totally surprised, was like, more of what Jumansik clarified that he wanted to hear everything else. All that brilliant stuff Junggu was saying about the play. He was eager to hear the rest. He pushed the script forward. He watched as Junggu took it. Almost reverently, he devoured the script. his eyes flying across the page with fiery focus. He hung on every word, staring. Jumansik's mind just short-circuited. The stuff this kid said so nonchalantly was insane. He'd considered the stage layout, the actors' every single move, the perfect angles from where the audience was sat, every last bit of the actor's placement and timing for the light cues, the brightness, the temperature, the placement of the lights, everything. Even the split-second pauses and tiny breaths between each line. These were things so intricate that even a full team of trained pros would find it nearly impossible to break down piece by piece. And yet, this kid somehow tailored all of it to fit my theater and stage, using only his words. He asked Jun Wu when he'd started learning about directing. This kind of genius had to come from formal training. He wondered aloud if Jun Wu had trained with a professional troupe. Jun Wu, baffled, simply asked what he meant. Ju Manik continued, pointing out that Jun Wu was watching the recorded performance here because he'd designed the entire storyboard himself. He asked if Jun Wu's job was in a related field. Jun Wu shook his head, looking apologetic. He said he'd only recently seen a play for the first time in his life. At first, he had actually planned to see a movie. But since there was no cinema in the area, he ended up at a play instead. Ju Manik's mind was blown. This was his first time ever watching a play. He remembered first seeing Jun Wu only 3 weeks ago. So this boy, who just entered high school, had understood and mastered the nuances of an entire stage in just 3 weeks. A play wasn't just about actors performing. Most ordinary folks believed that the acting was the most important part, but in reality, a play was a comprehensive art writing, visual design, sound, lighting, all of it, direction, all of it created by experts from various fields. And yet, Jun Wu, with just a glance at the script, had grasped and solved everything on his own. And he'd only been around plays for 3 weeks. Then, Ju Manik posed a question. How about we rewrite the dialogue? He needed to see what would happen if they rebuilt the script using Jun Wu's concepts. He had to test Jun Wu further. Deep down, it wasn't just the stage direction that had Ju Manik hooked. He wanted to know if this kid could also come up with fixes for the most crucial elements. The roles and the acting. Jun Wu paused, and then finally said that he couldn't do it. The reason was surprisingly simple. He didn't know the actors. Ju Manik thought to himself, well, of course. Dialogue and directing are 2 totally different skills. He said aloud that maybe it just depended on your skill. But Jun Wu said it wasn't about skill. To write truly effective dialogue, you have to understand the person behind the part, their life experiences, all their unspoken habits, those things that can't be hidden by performance or covered up by a forced expression. Without knowing those things, you can't write meaningful dialogue. He then pointed out how even the way each person says a letter carries its own unique vibration and pitch. These were the details that mattered. Ju Manik honestly couldn't believe his ears. How could a human being even process all of that? It sounded more like a job for a machine, but even as his brain resisted, he knew it was the truth. He was just having trouble processing it. Then Jun Wu said something weird. He told Ju Manik to try smiling at his reflection sometime. He explained that pupils get bigger when you smile for real. And then deadpanned that this reaction was just perfect for playing the role of a cold-blooded murderer. Ju Manik, startled, asked what he meant. Jun Wu just laughed, claiming it was only a joke. But in that moment, Ju Manik thought, Jun Wu wasn't just a prodigy at directing and stagecraft. This kid was something else. Something truly extraordinary. Then Jun Wu asked if Ju Manik was leaving. When silence was his only answer, Jun Wu said he would go on ahead. He thanked him for the meal and quietly left. Alone now, Ju Manik couldn't help but crack a small, faint smile. He felt like he'd been completely charmed by this odd, brilliant kid. Where in the world did someone like him even come from? He still had a ton of questions. But he knew deep down in his heart he'd probably be seeing Jun Wu again tomorrow. The next day, Jun Wu dropped by a place he used to work. He was simply there to collect the paycheck he'd rightfully earned. As he walked up, one of the guys sneered and asked whose kid this was. Jun Wu stood his ground, saying he was there for his pay. Another guy scoffed. asking if he'd ever left any money with Jun Wu. Jun Wu calmly replied that yes, he had. He reminded them they promised to pay later, and he now wanted the full amount. Minus 587. 1. One of the men got angry, asking, "What the heck Jun Wu just said?" Jun Wu calmly repeated his demand with persistence. Another man just chuckled, calling him a little brat. He said later actually meant never, and that Jun Wu was too naive to understand how the world really works. Jun Wu then asked if they were just refusing to pay him. The man replied with pure hostility, saying, "Of course not. He didn't have that kind of cash." Jun Wu sighed softly. He figured he likely wasn't going to see a dime of that money. He had given them one final chance. He really didn't want to cause a scene, so he had let it slide once or twice. They always had excuses, saying times were tough or that mistakes were normal with so many workers. But Jun Wu knew better. They figured that since he was young and had no parents, he wouldn't dare fight back. They had been pulling this on other workers, too. Skimming off the top and lying to their faces, sweet-talking people into giving up was their whole business model. Even so, Jun Wu felt a wave of frustration. Where on earth could he possibly find another job now? Just then, Ju Manik stormed onto the scene, shouting in a rage. He demanded to know if they'd shortchanged his pay. 2. A few minutes earlier, we flash back to Ju Manik, standing alone in the theater, just quietly waiting for someone. His eyes kept darting to the entrance as time ticked on, and he started to wonder why Jun Wu hadn't arrived yet. It was already well past the time Jun Wu usually arrived. A little flicker of concern crossed his features. Just then, his assistant came over. Ju Manik turned to him right away, saying his timing was absolutely perfect. And then, in a voice laced with confusion and worry, he asked where a 17-year-old boy would usually be at this hour. The assistant looked totally baffled by the sudden question. He said that at 17, a boy would normally be in school, which seemed pretty obvious. But Ju Manik revealed something that was truly surprising. Jun Wu wasn't in school. Instead, he worked at a construction site. The assistant, looking shocked, quickly offered a tip. Check the construction site. Ju Mansik looked totally lost, so his aide just had to repeat what he'd said, that Junu was at a construction site. Therefore, he'd obviously be there now. A light bulb went off for Ju Mansik, and he suddenly shouted that this was the answer, not saying another word. He bolted from the theater in a mad dash. His poor assistant yelled after him, yelling about some big meeting he was about to miss. But Ju Mansik didn't slow down. As he ran, one thought spun in his head. How did I not think of this before, since Jun Wu was at a construction site? That's precisely where he'd be. Ju Mansik soon found the site where Jun Wu worked. He lurked from a hidden spot and heard the whole awful talk between Jun Wu and the crew. As he heard their cruel words and pure greed, his face grew stormy with pure rage, which brings us back to now, with Ju Mansik storming in like a hurricane, shouting, asking if these guys seriously stiffed Jun Wu on his pay. He also clocked that they weren't even giving back the cash they already owed him. Jun Wu spun around, his face a mask of pure shock at this arrival. He asked why on earth Ju Mansik was here. A worker puffed his chest out, trying to play the big boss, warning that this was a restricted area for staff. But Ju Mansik was already seeing red. He tore into them, asking if their big plan was to rip off a kid's hard-earned pay. His voice shook with fury as he called them the lowest of the low. Then, in a fit of rage, he snatched their table and chucked it aside. The men jumped back, terrified, yelling as they stumbled backward. They demanded to know what he was doing. Stunned by his rage, Ju Mansik wasn't done. He swore he'd call the labor board on every single one of them. Then he spun to Jun Wu, asking why he was just standing there. Before Jun Wu could even protest, he grabbed his hand and insisted they were leaving. It was pointless dealing with trash like that. And with that, he dragged Jun Wu off. A bit later, they were sitting in Ju Mansik's office. You could cut the tension with a knife. Ju Mansik, still fuming, muttered curses about those workers, calling them sons of... Well, you know. He looked right at Jun Wu and asked why he'd put up with that garbage. Jun Wu, oddly calm, asked why Jumansik was so worked up. Jumansik shot back, saying that Jun Wu should be the one who's mad. He earned that money fair and square. He even offered to report them and have them all arrested. Jun Wu just looked confused, asking why he'd do all that. That answer really ticked Jumansik off. He told Jun Wu when a grown-up offers a hand, you're supposed to say, thanks. Not ask a million questions. Then his eyes fell on the cuts covering Jun Wu's hands. His whole tone changed. He told Jun Wu to quit doing such rough work and to just come work at the theater instead. As he considered it, Jumansik started thinking about last month's losses at the theater. Then, trying to sound casual, he mentioned that if Jun Wu took the job, he could see all the plays he wanted for free. Seemed like a good enough deal. But Jun Wu just stared and asked him why he was doing all this. Why was he being so helpful? Jumansik just scoffed and denied helping him at all. It was pure fate, a part-timer quit, leaving a spot open for someone new. Jung Wu, ever the skeptic, raised another question. Did Jumanik even have the cash to pay him? He always seemed so stressed, like a man who couldn't afford to hire any extra help. That really ticked Jumansik off. He asked if Jung Wu worried he'd get stiffed again. Jung Wu didn't even blink. He answered with a straight-up, yes. Fuming, Jumanik called him a punk. He swore that he'd go work construction himself, to make sure Jung Wu got paid every cent. As his temper cooled, Jumansik's mind drifted to yesterday. He couldn't recall everything Jung Wu had said, and none of it was proven yet. Still, the feeling from that moment stuck with him. He thought to himself, a kid like Jung Wu just doesn't belong on some construction site. Everyone needs a place they can call home. Even if it meant his own wallet would take a serious hit for now, he was dead set on keeping Jung Wu around. Jung Wu, ever curious, piped up about something Jumanik mentioned. He just had to ask, do part-timers get to see the plays? 2. A week later, the whole scene changed. Jumansik was waiting outside the rehearsal room, getting antsy. He glanced at his watch, wondering why Jung Wu hadn't emerged yet. He thought to himself that maybe Jung Wu was a lot more meticulous than he seemed. It had been a full week since Jung Wu began working there. Earlier that day, Jumansik had asked him to clean up the basement rehearsal room since it was a total mess. But now, it had been 3 whole hours. Getting annoyed, Jumansik grumbled to himself, wondering what on earth was taking so long. He'd planned to have a little chat with Jung Wu after he was done. Was this kid some kind of neat freak or what? I mean, even if he was, it shouldn't take over an hour to clean that tiny room. Fed up, Jumansik finally stormed down to the basement. The moment he stepped inside, he yelled, asking how long Jung Wu planned on camping out down there. But then he froze. The room was a sea of books and scattered papers. His eyes went wide with shock. Right in the middle of it all, Jung Wu turned around, explaining the bookshelf had collapsed. That's where they'd kept all the precious scripts. Jumanik surveyed the chaos, and the whole story clicked into place. While Jung Wu was cleaning, the shelf must have just given up, sending all the scripts flying. And in that moment of pure chaos, Jung Wu had become totally lost in the words on the pages. Still, Jumanik had to ask, so what were you doing? Jung Wu's answer was simple. He just wanted to read the script. Just one time. Jumanik asked if he'd read it aloud. Jung Wu, a little flustered, clarified that he'd only read it silently to himself. Jumansik frowned. If that's all, then why did it look like a tornado hit? Was Jung Wu acting out the scenes by himself, a solo performance, and why a Russian play of all things? They had tons of Korean scripts. Jung Wu answered coolly. I've already read all of those. Jumanik blinked, not sure he'd heard him correctly. He pointed toward the bookshelf, asking him to clarify. Jung Wu just pointed to the tidy shelves and confirmed he'd read every single one. Jumansik could only stare at him, completely speechless. As the weight of that confession sank in, Jumansik looked at Jung Wu, puzzled, and asked if that's why he'd picked up the Russian script. He wondered if this kid even knew Russian. Jun Wu's reply was a whole lot of nothing. Instead, he just pointed to a Russian dictionary. His one and only lifeline. Manik frowned, wondering how a dictionary helps. It's just for looking up a few words. And that's it. Jun Wu calmly explained he had only looked up a few words. But it was totally enough to grasp the overall meaning of the script. Manik just stared, his mind blown. It made no sense. This boy had somehow managed to set up this entire stage, bringing it to life just by knowing a few words. And that book in Jung Woo's hand looked so familiar. He'd studied that very same script a million times as a kid. And the part Jung Woo was on was a huge, pivotal scene. The part right before the main character totally loses it and starts flipping over all the furniture in a massive rage. He glanced around the basement. Nothing was just tossed around. No. Everything had its own spot. Each thing was placed on purpose. Jamu had nailed the character's emotional vibe with scary good accuracy. The intense feeling in the setup wasn't a fluke. It was deliberate. Intentional. Perfect. Manik had to say something. He asked Jamu why he'd pick a classic play he could barely even understand. He pointed out the boy didn't even know the basic lingo of theater. He demanded to know what Jamu was trying to become. Why was he always so darn quiet? Especially with a genius like Manik right here to help. What kind of crazy dream was this kid even chasing? Was he trying to be a stage manager? Or a director? He insisted Jun Woo had to spill the beans. Jung Woo's answer was simple. His dream was just to live like this. Exactly how he was right now. Manik's eyebrows shot up. Like this. Then what's all this for? What's the point of this whole setup? Jungwoo replied softly that he'd only set the stage before the scene. It was just prep. Manik repeated, his mind reeling. Set the stage. Did that mean Jun Woo was actually going to act it out? John Woo didn't say no. His quiet was a big, loud yes. Manik had just figured the kid wanted to direct. But now it all clicked. That's why Jun Woo was so completely lost in the stage. So obsessed with getting the setup right. He asked Jun Woo what he thought his real talent was. Directing or acting? I mean, it's just one scene. Was all of this really necessary? John Woo didn't even blink. He said nothing in the setup was random. Every single thing. Every spot. Every mark had a real meaning. It all had a purpose. Manik just waved it off, calling it an excuse. Great actors can bring the drama anywhere, even with no props or prep time. But Junwoo disagreed. He said theater. Well, it's different. That's the whole reason a stage exists. Because in the theater, the stage itself is a huge part of the story. It's not just about the acting. It's about building a whole new world. He added that every part of the stage must work in perfect harmony. The actors, the props, even the lights. He said everything has to move as one single thing. Manik pushed back. So harmony's more important than talent, Junwoo said. It's definitely a part of it. Yes, but above all else, he wanted a perfect stage. And he was about to prove it to Manik. Right here and now. Manik's brain totally blanked at the confession. He was speechless. Jamu then strode up and smacked his hand on the bench. His face flipped on a dime. Heartbreak. Letdown. And pure agony all at once. And wow. This was no act. It was raw. Unfiltered. And painfully real. Manik felt the scene ignite. This was the look of a man at his absolute wit's end. A guy with zero left to lose. Jung-woo wasn't faking it. He times the character now. Amid the messy props and the quiet room, Jun-woo had completely morphed. It knocked all the words out of Manik. He wondered, how did this kid even pull that off? His eyes were so bloodshot. The whites were red from popped vessels. A physical thing no actor could fake. That level of commitment wasn't just impressive. It was basically impossible in so little time. Then Jung-woo just let out a cry. Yelling what the heck the point of it all was. His voice rang with pure frustration. Taking a step back, his foot hit a watch on the floor. He wobbled. About to go down, Manik blurted out a watch it on instinct. He saw how the junk everywhere was messing with the guy's footwork. But Junwoo didn't crash. With stunning control, he snagged a nearby chair, catching his balance like a total pro, and plopped down. The move was smooth. Easy. So natural. Manik's eyes were huge. That was no accident. Even the near tumble was scripted. The way Jun grabbed for the chair, how his body just folded right into it. Even the weary look on his face as he sat was all on purpose. Everything. His pose. The broken props. It all just clicked together perfectly. He wasn't just on the money. He was a genius. Every last piece of this stage was in perfect sync. Jamu finally whispered that he was done. But Manik just shook his head. Oh no. This was not enough. He stared at Jamu with a quiet fire and said the other auditions were off. He needed to be on that stage. A few months back, Jamu was lost in some heavy thoughts. It had already been 2 years since he'd cut ties with his dad and left that whole life behind. Ever since, he'd been living like a ghost. Just landing a simple part-time gig was a struggle. The thought did pop in his head that, if he wanted, he could make things way easier, but he'd sworn an oath to never get mixed up in that business again. So, working construction became his new normal. Day in and day out. It was tough work, but oddly satisfying. All that repetition kept him grounded, but under that steady grind, he knew what his heart really wanted, even if he refused to admit it out loud. And then one day, a coworker yelled over, pointing out how young he was. The guy said a kid his age had no business wasting his youth on a construction site. He said a new theater opened in the next neighborhood and told Jun Wu he ought to go take a look. That one word stuck in Jun Wu's head. A theater. He'd heard it. Sure. But never thought about what it could mean for him. His curiosity got the best of him. He walked inside and just stood there. Before a stage. It wasn't a movie on a screen like he'd first figured. It was a play. A live show. And, right there in the middle of the crowd, some guy nearby was sighing up a storm. But that didn't grab him. What really mattered was how Ju felt inside. He'd felt a quick pang of disappointment. It wasn't a movie. But that feeling evaporated fast. Man. It had been ages since he was this captivated. The actor's energy was a whole different kind of magic. This wasn't a movie, but a live wire of emotion. Totally unfiltered. The performers had no safety net of camera angles or sound edits. They were just there, in the moment, breathing with us all. And right then and there, Jun Wu felt a weird little spark. A crazy urge to be up there too. And from that day on, everything just flipped. The second his construction shifts were done, his feet had a mind of their own. Without a single thought, he'd make a beeline for the theater. It was like a magnet pulling him in. That's where he first bumped into Mansik. Some guy who looked like theater staff started asking about Jun Wu. He was seriously persistent, always buzzing around Jun Wu's personal space. His nosiness was a little grating. But weirdly, it wasn't all that bad. Mansik had a bark. For sure sharp and blunt, but no real bite. He seemed like a total grump on the outside, but not an ounce of meanness. Jun Wu remembered how this same guy had stood up for him that one time, protecting him from a sketchy worker trying to pull a fast one on him. That moment really stuck with him. It reminded Jun Wu that good guys still existed out there. People who didn't just look away. And from the look in Mansik's eyes, Jun Wu could tell this dude had been through some stuff, too. Maybe that's why they were meant to meet. Maybe that's why this was the beginning. The first step wasn't some big drama. It was one moment. One choice. One nosy trip to a theater. But it lit a fire in him. Something so real and alive. Anyway, back to the present. After seeing Jun Wu's performance, Mansik was thinking. What he just saw had him totally and completely hooked. He hadn't really expected much from Jun Wu's acting. I mean, you need life experience for that stuff. Right. No matter how talented. Jun Wu was only 17. A 17-year-old kid is going to have his limits. Obviously. He knew the kid was a certified genius. But brains and artistry aren't the same thing. They're from different planets. But Mansik realized how totally wrong he was. He'd completely underestimated what those smarts could do when aimed at acting. The same skills that seemed purely academic were actually all part of the prep work for this. Sneaky. Silent steps leading Jun Wu right to this moment on stage. Later on. Offstage. Mansik looked Jun Wu dead in the eye and said he didn't belong here. He had to be on a real stage. Jun Wu. Cool as a cucumber. He just picked up some books and said he had zero intention of doing any of that. Mansik just couldn't take it anymore. He raised his voice, hoping to shake the kid out of his super zen act. He yelled that Jun Wu had no clue how big his talent was, if he'd just trust him and follow his lead. He could be a massive star. But Jun Wu's answer was simple. He was perfectly happy with how things were. Mansik shot back. Was this practice room script really his endgame? Was that seriously enough for him? He had no desire to act. With all that talent, why would anyone with a gift like that just walk away? Jun Wu's reply was blunt. He didn't want to be famous. Oof. Those words hit Mansik hard. This kid actually got it. He wasn't blind to his own brilliance. Oh. He knew he was a star. His whole vibe screamed it. If he ever graced the stage with his presence, stardom was a sure thing. Honestly, famous felt like too small a word for his destiny. And yet, despite the brush off, Jumansik wasn't throwing in the towel. Not a chance. He got closer, telling Youngvu he got it. He had some tragic backstory. But seriously, how much drama could he have seen at his tender age? It wasn't a cakewalk for Jumansik to get to his spot. You know, life hadn't been a picnic for him either. But despite that, he made a vow. Whatever chaos followed, whatever the fallout, he'd handle it all. He'd take on every single consequence. All Junwoo had to do was live his dream, his true calling. Hearing this, Junwoo was completely floored. This guy was offering to shoulder every burden for someone he'd known for less than a month. He just had to ask why. Was he seriously willing to take someone out for him? And to that, Jumansik, without a blink, declared that yes, he'd take them all out for Junwoo. Then he popped the question again. So, are you in? And just like that, the scene changed. Junwoo was now backstage, behind the curtain, psyching himself up for the show. As he peeked through a tiny little gap, the huge crowd made his stomach do a little flip. His heart pounded, not from fright, but from a familiar feeling. He finally understood the old man's passion. He always had. Really. He'd just been pretending not to. That ache of not wanting to let his gift just rot away. It was so real. It lived deep inside him. Jumansik was a man of action. Not just words. He'd set him up with a job to see shows for free. And now he was ready to basically sign his life over to him. Is that why he finally caved? Or was there something else? The curtain went up. Up in the booth, Jumansik turned to his assistant, a grin on his face. It's showtime. The shocked assistant asked if this was that same kid he'd been raving about. Jumansik confirmed it, adding a warning not to be too shocked. This kid is on another level. But the assistant was doubtful. The lead actor had bailed just 5 days ago. Could the boy really have had enough time to prep? This role was a monologue beast with a massive script. Does he even have any real stage experience? Jumansik just paused for dramatic effect. His own thoughts screamed in disbelief. Yeah. 5 days. That was a crazy timeline. Especially for a guy who'd never even taken acting 101. Then he finally dropped the bomb on his assistant. It wasn't 5 days. It was 12 hours. Shocked. The assistant's brain just short-circuited. He asked what on earth Jumansik just said. Jumansik repeated it. Cool as a cucumber. It's been 12 hours. And for a prodigy like this, the mountain of a script was no big deal. Junwoo stepped onto the stage, sat in a chair, and let the character's emotions fully possess him. His voice, shaking with heartache and grief, poured raw feeling into each line. He confessed he was forever a prisoner of those memories after he lost his only love. His world became a cold prison of darkness and silence. The memory of seeing her first, as if time itself had just stopped. It was a feeling he'd never known. He recalled how his world shifted the first time she took his hand and smiled at him. Even at their first goodbye, he was utterly powerless. Totally helpless to do anything. The audience was dead silent, completely hypnotized by Jungwoo's act. Then, easing up from his chair, Jungwoo kept going, his voice full of heartache, talking about their totally separate lives, his dramatic past, all the tough stuff he'd gone through. And the hands he was dealt. She just didn't get any of it. She was his whole world. You know, so how could she just say that stuff to him? Jung Woo's acting didn't just hit the crowd. Even Ju Manik's right-hand man was standing there. Totally floored. He turned to Monik, asking where he dug up this acting beast. Mansik just stayed quiet, analyzing the whole show, even without fancy voice lessons or breathing tricks. The actor had the whole theater totally hooked on their performance. This was way more than just knowing lines. It was something deeper. The actors truly became their roles, with each emotion changing their lines a bit. If the person on that stage was really the character, they would have said those exact words. Just like that. Manik had to ask himself, is this even acting anymore? Then, as the scene continued, a girl named Ellie made her grand entrance on stage, tripping and landing right in Jung Woo's arms. She was still, leaning on him while Jung Woo cried his heart out. He then replied, spilling the tea, that there was a secret she kept. The real reason she'd ghosted him before. You see. But then, crickets. She totally blanked on her lines. Ju, in the audience, started to sweat a little. A classic newbie mistake for actors who are new to the stage. You can fix blunders in movies or TV shows. But here, you can't have a single blooper in a live show. He just prayed that even if they messed up a little bit, they'd just keep going like nothing happened. In that nail-biting moment, Jung Woo rescued the scene, placing a hand gently on Ellie's cheek. He kept the scene going without a hitch. He whispered that she didn't have to say a word more. He already knew. And just like that, the scene was over, and the curtains closed. The whole place exploded with applause. Everyone on their feet, totally touched by what they'd just seen. The magic of their acting had completely won everyone over. Jung Woo and the Ellie actress slipped off stage and headed for the practice room. Even though she'd totally forgotten her lines, Jung Woo's ad-lib was so smooth that it left Ju Monik seriously impressed and feeling super proud. He couldn't believe what they managed in just 12 hours. Actors usually need over 2 weeks to really get inside a character's head. They still had to learn lines, block scenes, and get used to the props. And somehow, these two did it all in under a day, and even covered a co-star's slip-up with some perfect on-the-spot acting. Ju's assistant was just stunned. He couldn't believe that was only the reaction to the very first act. Chu nodded, just as shocked. The assistant asked again, are they seriously only 17 years old? How did they pull off that kind of acting with almost no prep? But Ju Monik said it was wrong to think they were only focused on the acting part. His assistant looked puzzled. So Ju explained more. He noted that the whole stage idea, the chair's size, how the actors moved, the lights, and even the colors had all been completely switched up. Once pointed out, his assistant saw he'd been totally clueless until now. Oh. Hide. Admitting he was just as lost. He couldn't picture what feelings should look like, or how lines could just change their whole vibe in a second. Ever since that last show, these young actors spoke and acted in ways that were completely over his head. But he was absolutely certain of one thing. This person, Jun Woo, was more captivating than anyone else in that theater. Meanwhile, in the rehearsal room, Jun Woo and the girl playing Ellie sat near each other. She was softly running her lines again, trying to nail them down. Jun Woo, however, just sat there quietly, off in his own little world. A funny feeling stirred inside him. This wasn't his first time at the rodeo. In his past life, when he was a professional fibber, he'd played a million parts. He knew he was talented. But this time, something just felt different. The audience's intense gaze, their teary eyes, that emotional peak, they all created a buzz unlike anything he'd ever felt. For that one fleeting moment, everyone, including him, felt like they were in another universe. This new life. This second shot he'd so carelessly taken on. He was once ready to check out and leave his name behind. He truly thought he could live this way. But now he wondered, could he actually pull this off? At the rehearsal room, a flustered girl stood before Ju Monik, nervously admitting she forgot her lines because she just got so overwhelmed. But Ju Monik didn't even glance at her. He just blew on by, placing a firm hand on Jun Wu's shoulder and calling him a little punk. You could hear the shock. Jun Wu played it so humble. Then boom. Revealed this crazy talent. Juman's questioned him, asking why he wasn't staring at the script when he was about to go on stage. Jun Wu responded weakly, saying he felt woozy. That just made Jumansik see red. He snapped, accusing Jun Wu of faking his passion now that he had the part. Jun Wu said he just didn't want to get caged in by the lines. Jumansik scowled, irritated by what sounded like more mysterious mumbo-jumbo from this kid. He paused, gears turning in his head. Those words. They rang a bell. Suddenly, the scene cuts to a television interview. We see an actress on screen, speaking with total grace. She explained that real prep comes from carrying the role inside you. She stressed that staring at a script too long can trap an actor in the text. If you truly get the character and their feelings, the lines will just flow out naturally. That's why, once on set, she barely glanced at the script. She laughed softly, admitting she probably sounded full of herself. But after 20+ years of acting, she had earned that right. Back in the rehearsal room, Jumansik found himself mulling her words, and Jun Wu's. The similarity was just uncanny. To hear that view from a kid who just started acting and had only finished Act 1 of the play should have just sounded like pure arrogance. And yet, strangely, it didn't. A wise line from this kid somehow felt lived in. Jun Wu added that the script was full of weird terms and it was giving him a massive headache. He realized Jun Wu didn't know the first thing about stage lingo. Yiki had just shoved the script at the boy without even thinking about that. Jun Wu had already outgrown the point where Jumanik could personally help him. He puzzled over where to even start now. Soon, the cast was called for Act 2. They performed with such passion, lifting the play to new heights. The audience roared with approval, leaping to their feet to applaud. Amid the crowd, a man stared at Jun Wu, whispering softly that he had finally found him. The day after their big performance, Jun Wu was discovered buried in books. Jumanik strolled over, teasing if he planned to have a staring contest with them forever. Jun Wu asked where he'd been all morning, pointing out how Jumanik had just disappeared. Jumanik said what he'd brought back ought to hold him over. He then revealed a huge stack of books, offering them up to Jun Wu. He admitted they weren't exactly fun, but they would help. He knew Jun Wu felt stuck recently. Jun Wu was totally stunned. This tiny town had only one bookstore. Jumanik had clearly gone a long way in the sweltering heat just to get them, proving just how much effort he made. Jumanik wondered if these dense acting theories were even needed for a guy like Jun Wu. Was he about to cage the kid's raw genius inside some boring, rigid box? But still, he felt he had to offer this knowledge. Jun Wu started to read and then smiled. He thought it was actually fun. Jumanik asked if he felt even a tiny bit better. Jun Wu admitted it was his first time studying like this, and it was way more fun than he'd thought. Jumanik was intrigued. Fun, he echoed. Was this seriously Jun Wu's first time ever doing something like this? He then asked Jun Wu how he acted so naturally without knowing a single thing. Jun Wu coolly replied that being a good actor wasn't just for actors. Jumanik was lost. Jun Wu then warned him, "A guy like you could get eaten alive out there." That just confused Jumanik more. What? A guy like him? Jun Wu explained. Jumanik just dives in head first. Jumanik scoffed, asking what a little punk like Jun Wu would know. But had he ever really done that? Jun Wu pointed out he was doing it right then. He added that Jumanik knew nothing about him. A quiet moment passed between them. Then Jun Wu broke it, asking Jumanik if he wanted him to be famous. Jumanik answered honestly. It wasn't about the fame. He just wanted Jun Wu to live his life doing what he loved. It took Jumanik a long time to figure that out for himself. He admitted that Jun Wu might think he was just being used. But even if Jun Wu had totally bombed on stage, he still would have gone to that bookstore for him that day. Probably. Jun Wu smiled, saying that's not what he thought at all. In his head, Jun Wu thought that if he truly believed he was being used, he'd have already burned this whole theater to the ground. He looked at him and said he appreciated the books. He needed them anyway. Jumanik asked if he really meant it. Jun Wu confirmed that he did. In his head, Jun Wu quietly vowed to repay him someday. Just then, someone arrived looking for Ju Manik. The man asked if he was the theater's owner. Ju Manik eyed the man, wondering why a guy like him would show up here. What was he possibly doing in a place so far off the beaten path? Ju Manik recognized him instantly. NK Entertainment, a titan in South Korea's entire entertainment industry. This wasn't just any agency, it was the Cupid of Korea's A-list acting scene. And inside this hallowed hall of fame, the man now standing before him was a total rock star. He was revered for his crazy ability to pair perfect actors with projects, and for supervising the casting of tons of blockbuster films and dramas. His winning streak was practically perfect. Pretty much everything he touched turned into a box office goldmine. Even though he wasn't an actor, everyone knew his name, which was super weird for a behind-the-scenes guy. The guy introduced himself smoothly. Troy Jamon, NK Entertainment. In return, Ju Manik, playing it cool but intrigued, said he owned the joint. Then asked what a big shot like him was doing in a humble little place like this. Jamon said he caught the show last night, and one kid in particular just completely stole his heart on stage. He asked if the kid was part of the crew. Janset was like, yeah, kinda, but not. You know, officially. The kid didn't have a title, but he helped out and was always in the shows. Then, getting all serious, Jamon said he'd come to make an offer. He confessed this was all very sudden, maybe a bit too forward of him, but he just couldn't shake what he saw. It had been ages since he'd felt this spark, like he'd found a diamond in the rough. Jumanzik, putting the pieces together, asked if Jamon was thinking about casting the kid, but Jamon said this wasn't just any casting call. They were in a real bind trying to find the perfect child actor for a massive upcoming project. The issue, he said, was that even the talented kids they found were like little robots. They totally lacked any real heart. Sure, they were smart. They could mimic adults fine, but getting that real mature vibe was a whole other story. This kid, though, had done the impossible. He channeled the emotional life of a 30-year-old so naturally, not forcing it or looking goofy. In fact, he was better than any casting director's wildest dreams. Jamon was floored that this pure, raw talent was hiding out in this tiny, humble little theater. A bit offended, but still proud, Jumansik declared the kid's talent was way beyond impressive. So, he asked if Jamon had a whole game plan cooked up for the boy. He noted he knew NK had deep pockets and was a class act. So he asked, is NK planning to offer him the full training package? Parts in massive domestic and international projects, and even chances to go study abroad, and invites to all the major industry shindigs. He stressed this was all on the table, provided that NK truly believed in the kid's future. Jamon asked flat out if he was really supposed to offer this huge package to a total unknown, an untrained newbie, for absolutely nothing. But Ju Manik didn't even blink. If Jamon had really seen the kid perform, he would totally understand why the ask was so big. Just the fact that Manik was sitting here, having this conversation, showed how much faith he had in the boy's amazing future. Yamun Sihilt, saying he'd try his best to make it work, but reminded Manik it wasn't a decision he could just make all by himself. Still, in his head, Manik couldn't help but get antsy. If Jamon was still on the fence about this, he'd totally misjudged the kid's talent. Yesterday's show was just the tip of the iceberg. A tiny peek, a mere hint of the kid's true power. Jimin slid him a business card, making his intentions crystal clear. NK decided to stay out of it. They wanted to give the kid a space where he could truly flourish. He hoped that Ju Manik, who clearly adored the kid, they would think about what path would help him grow the fastest and be best for his career. He told him to mull it over and call him. Meanwhile, Jun Wu was sprawled on the floor elsewhere in the theater, deep in an angsty funk. His mind was a mess. What was he even doing? He was totally broke, with no cash, and he wasn't born with a silver spoon. It's not like he was some kind of gold digger, but the not knowing was eating him up. From afar, Jumansik spotted him lying there and muttered, "Is this kid already bored out of his mind?" He strolled over, pretending he was just checking if Jung Woo was actually, Working, he chided him gently, wondering how he could just waste time when such a brilliant teacher was nearby. And he hadn't asked one question, picking up a book lying next to Jun Wu. He sensed something was amiss, clearly. Something was weighing on the poor kid's mind. Junggu confessed he was reading the script, and some translated lines felt weird. He said they just didn't sit right with him. One line especially jumped out. "I've only been a professional for 5 years. But I've studied like someone with 10 years of experience." Hwanik chuckled to himself. Was this his moment to finally be useful? But then Jun Wu pointed out another line. And Ju Manik's eyes nearly popped out. He was stunned. It was in some ancient language so obscure he didn't recognize it at all. He'd tackled old texts before, but they were always the handy translated versions. This one had him totally stumped. Humiliated. He made up a lame excuse. "My stomach hurts," and dashed out. Outside. He slumped against a wall, his mind reeling. Seriously. How many more tricks did this kid have? This kid was the rising star he'd always dreamed of discovering. But oops. Jun Wu had already zoomed right past him. Jumansik had flopped at a lot of things. But he'd never felt this completely useless before now. How could he possibly mentor a prodigy with his own meager skills? And just at that moment, Jun Wu returned. Script in hand yet again. He held it out, asking for help because a certain part made no sense. Jumansik took it, relieved to finally see something familiar. He explained the part was about Brecht's fourth wall theory. You know, that invisible wall between the audience and actors. In Brecht's plays, they smash that wall on purpose, turning theater into a place that provokes thought and sends a social message. Not just simple entertainment. Jun Wu nodded, getting it, then asked about another part. Ju Manik glanced at it and explained that bit too. It was easy. He patiently walked the kid through the meaning. Later, alone in his office, Jumansik got to thinking again. Who'd have guessed he'd be revisiting heavy theory at his age, ever since he joined the theater world? He'd never felt such an intellectual fire. But that burst of energy was short-lived. Jun Wu had this blend of natural-born talent, a crazy love for the craft, and a fire that wouldn't quit. His progress was off the charts. He was way past needing books or theories. Honestly, his performance was already schooling most professionals. Later, Manik wandered to the stage. Intrigued, what he found stunned him. Junu was there, all alone. Long after everyone else had clocked out, he was tweaking the set, perfecting every word, every single move. He nailed every scene, soaking up each character's feelings, their quirks, their every little tick. He was even moving with the stage lights, shifting his spot for every new angle and change of vibe. This wasn't just practice now. It was something else. Jun Wu was making the empty stage feel alive. He'd rewrite lines, capture the soul of each character, and just live it. This wasn't practice anymore. This had become pure, unadulterated joy, total creative bliss. And right then, Jumanik knew what he had to do. Maybe it was finally time to stop holding back. He whipped out his phone and dialed Chu Jam. His voice was cool and steady. Jumanik here. Let's cut the nonsense. We need to meet in person. Soon. Jumanik and Jung Woo were sitting across from each other, sharing a meal. While they ate, Jumanik's mind wandered back to the call he'd made earlier to Director Jamon. On that call, Director Jamon had to admit that Ju had made an incredibly smart move. He swore every condition would be met. And if the kid, Jan Woo, wanted anything else, they were totally open to negotiating it. Thinking back, Jumansik knew they wouldn't back down easily if they were promising him the moon. It was obvious they were desperate. He'd told Director Jamin they'd have to talk it over with the child first. Director Jamon then asked if Jumansik was free tomorrow. Since they were on a roll, he wanted to see Junwoo read from their company script. Just one time. Stunned, Yumanik asked, "You mean, like, an autosone now?" The director quickly told him. No pressure. Of course. The visit, he claimed, was just to see if the child's talent was a good fit. But in his head, Director Jamon figured the offer was too good to refuse. The contract was a done deal. What wannabe actor would ever say no to a personal offer from the man himself? But Jumansik had his doubts. Knowing Jung Woo's track record, he had a feeling the kid wouldn't just play along. Back in the present, Jumansik turned to Jun Woo and brought up Seoul. But Jun Woo could not have cared less. If he had a spare moment, he'd rather just look over another script. That answer made Jumansik just sigh. It felt so obvious to him. But maybe dragging him there in person was the only way to change his mind. How on earth was he going to convince him, snapping him out of it? Jan Woo asked why he wasn't touching his food. He then declared that if he wasn't going to eat, he'd finish it all. Jolted back to reality, Jumansik just let him, asking if he should get more. Junwoo declined, saying he was all good. Still, Jumansik couldn't shake the weird vibe he got from the kid. Why did someone like Youngwoo get under his skin like this? Desperate to change the subject, he asked if Junwoo had ever made it to Sue. Junwoo just said no. Ju was floored. He'd never even been to Sue. He poked, asking what he'd been up to and if he'd ever seen the world. Junwoo's answer, a flat nope. This just about floored Jumansik. Not a single trip. Why not go when he could? Realizing he was totally sidetracked, Ju reeled it in and tried a new tactic. He asked if Junwoo knew about the famous Yukum building in Sue. He hyped it up. It's huge. 63 floors. Jungu's chilly reply. How? Amazing. Undeterred, Jumansik pressed on, casually mentioning he had a little trip to Sue scheduled for tomorrow. He then wondered if Junwoo wanted to tag along, hinting it could be a pretty fun little getaway for him. He described Sue as a whole other league than their countryside. He brought up Myeongdong, a buzzing city district full of huge buildings, and even the Han River, making their little creek back home look like a puddle in comparison. But Junwoo gave nothing back, just quietly eating, feeling the cringe. Jumansik lamely added, well, that's just how it is. At last, Jungwoo spoke up. He asked Ju if he was trying to get rid of him or something like that. Ju stammered that it wasn't like that at all, he just wanted him to see Sue. But Junwoo looked so let down. He called Ju out for being greedy when it was convenient. A startled Jumansik worried if his whole plan was exposed. Did he overhear that call with Director Jang? Or worse, was he secretly scheming with the director behind his back? Ju was filled with regret, thinking he should have just been straight with Junwoo from the very beginning. Then, Junwoo calmly asked if they were heading to Sue tomorrow. Totally blindsided, Ju sputtered in shock. Wait, we're really going? Junwoo just shrugged. If we're going, we're going. Ju then asked if there was any place special he wanted to check out. Junwoo said there wasn't. Jumansik thought, oh no. He's totally getting the wrong idea about this. Even though he joked around, this wasn't about shipping Junwoo off for some professional training. He made it clear this trip wasn't to level up his acting skills. Junwoo just nodded, saying he got it. Ju kept explaining. Whatever Junwoo was picturing, this company, NK Entertainment, was way beyond that. Even if he didn't get Junwoo's whole deal, he thought the company could probably help sort things out. He added that Junwoo needed to be around people on his level. It didn't matter how great his acting was. This town was full of amateurs. Honestly, he'd be lucky not to waste his massive talent by sticking around. He doubted anyone here really got how special Junwoo was. Intrigued, Junwoo asked about the company's location. Ju told him it was NK Entertainment, promising him that if he just went there, people would finally see what he was really worth. Junwoo nodded. Okay. Now, Ju was baffled. Why was he so agreeable all of a sudden? This was so not like him. He wondered if Junwoo broke a prop or maybe started some kind of drama. Still suspicious, Ju asked if he was serious about going. The scene changes. Junwoo and Jumansik stood before the NK Entertainment office. The slick, organized studio had Jumansik practically vibrating with excitement, seeing him totally starstruck. Junwoo playfully teased. What's the matter? And here I thought you weren't the country boy. Are you saying I'm being dramatic? Chu shot back. Junwoo quickly clarified. I would never say that. Soon. They were at the meeting room door. Ju took a huge breath and told Jun Wu to go on in. You're coming too. Right. Jun Wu asked. Ju said he was just the doorman, advising Jun Wu to be charming and choose his words very carefully. Once inside, Jun Wu entered the room. Director Jamon greeted him with a warm smile. Also, there was Gil Juno, NK Entertainment star player, waiting quietly. Director Jamon then motioned for a nervous Jun Wu to have a seat. His face was a poker mask, but his eyes missed nothing. Jun Wu's gaze scanned the room, then stopped on a familiar face. Gil Juno. The name practically boomed in his head. NK Entertainment's biggest star. Right there in the flesh. He wasn't at his absolute peak celebrity status just yet. But boy, did he still own the room just by existing in it. Ranked 41st then. But still a big deal. If you cared about movies at all, Gil Juno's face was impossible to miss. Even at that stage, he was super active, building his reputation as one heck of a supporting actor. Jun Wu found it super weird. A guy like Gil Juno had better things to do than sit in on this kind of meeting. It could only mean one thing. Director Jamon brought him here on purpose. There was a motive behind it. A test. Maybe. A setup, a challenge. Jun Wu had no clue. But seeing a young Gil Juno in person was like a dream come true. There was something so real about him. Like a star from the golden age of cinema. Then, breaking the silence, Director Jamon asked for Jun Wu's name. Cool as a cucumber. Jun Wu said he didn't have one yet but was looking. Jamon was stumped by that. No name. Huh. Did this kid already have a cool stage name ready to go? He didn't look nervous at all. Not one bit. In fact, he looked oddly at ease. Like this was just another Tuesday. Jamin wondered. Does this guy have any idea who we are? Is he really that clueless about who's in this room? Then again, if he'd grown up in a secluded little bubble somewhere, it was actually entirely possible. Deciding to ease into it, Jamon suggested they just take their time and get to know each other. He said he'd watched Jun Wu's performance and thought it was genuinely fantastic. So, he asked when he started acting. Jun Wu said, since the show was 2 weeks ago. He'd been acting for, well, about 2 weeks. Jamon's eyebrow shot up. He clarified. No. I mean, when did you first start acting? To which Jun Wu replied, totally unfazed, that the performance was his first time ever. That answer hit Jamon like a ton of bricks. Had it really only been 2 weeks since this kid first acted? That level of raw talent so fast? Was that even possible? Shaking off his complete surprise, Director Jamon handed Jun Wu a script. It was for a drama called Miracle Change. It was a project the company was hoping to eventually turn into a movie. Jun Wu took the script in his hands, and as he read the title, a strange feeling stirred inside him. Miracle Change. He knew it from his past life. It was a story about a high school kid and a teacher in his 40s who somehow end up swapping bodies. A familiar story, but one packed with heart, humor, and a lot of growth. As Jamon explained, the premise, Jung Woo knew exactly what was up. Then Jamon asked him to give a little line-reading performance. Just a quick peek would be enough to size him up. Jungwoo's eyes darted to the door. Outside, Jumansik was waiting, holding his breath, desperate to hear the conversation. He pressed his ear flat, straining to catch any sound from within, but those soundproof walls weren't letting a single secret out. Back inside, Jam told Jun Woo to start on page 34. Meanwhile, Gil Juno was watching him closely. Something about Jun Woo's vibe was just different. Most aspiring actors Juno saw were total clingers, begging for his attention and pleading for any little crumb of validation. They'd shower him with compliments, claiming he was their idol. But this kid just didn't seem to care. No fear, no fawning, no desperation in his eyes. Gil Juno remembered the Jamin he knew, a director who wouldn't think twice about kicking someone out if they weren't good enough. He would have eaten a kid like Jung Woo for breakfast and made sure they never worked again. So why the pass? What's with this kid? Just how talented is he? Jung Woo opened the script and started reading from page 34. The scene was a chaotic school hallway, packed with kids. Laughter bounced around. The air was thick with chatter. Some kids zipped by on skateboards. Others had their noses in books. It was a beautiful, youthful mess. And right in the middle stood Tae-young, totally lost and trying to make sense of all the chaos. The camera zooms in on him, catching his totally confused face. He was a complete mess. So lost. His own voice sounded weird to him. Why am I here? Huh, why do I sound so strange? As Jung Woo read the lines. His mind wasn't just stuck on the words. He saw the whole scene. Becoming Tae-young right there in that chaotic hallway. He wasn't just reading. He was feeling it. He could imagine the breeze. Hear the laughter echoing off the lockers. The rattle of skateboard wheels on the tile. His eyes even moved like he was watching a camera pan the whole scene. Jaman saw the change in Jung Woo's vibe and asked if he wanted to act it out. It's not that hard. You know, right. Just a simple little read. But Jung Woo looked at him and calmly said he couldn't do it here. Totally confused. Jaman asked what the problem was. Jung Woo explained it wasn't the room or a lack of focus that stopped him from delivering the lines. It was because a key ingredient was missing. The sounds of skateboards. The low chatter of the students. That breeze from an open window. He said all those things were baked right into the dialogue. Without them, the scene just felt empty. It was missing that real-life texture. The noise blended with the lines is what makes it feel real. And that's exactly what this room was missing. Director Jaman was stunned into silence. Thinking it over. Noise in the dialogue. Could that really be the secret sauce? Most actors never even consider that. Then, without saying anything, Gil Juno strode over and snatched the script from Jun Woo. He started reading it himself. Looking dead serious. Almost bothered. Director Jaman, shocked by this, mumbled to himself. He'd never, ever seen Gil Juno act this way before. Something about this Jun Woo kid was totally changing the vibe in the room. And just then, Jun Woo remembered what Jumansik had mentioned earlier about the kind of chances this whole meeting could open up. Like basic training. Big-time projects here and abroad. Even chances to study overseas. But all that just flew right over Jun Woo's head. He admitted aloud he was totally lost on all that. Director Jaman said, even if things weren't perfect, Jamu could give it a shot. Just see it as a casual read-through. No biggie. Nothing too serious. Just a small introduction to the process. At that, it clicked for Jamu. This wasn't some huge performance. They just wanted him to read a few lines. Super chill. He checked. So, you just want me to sit and read. Looking over at Jill Cherno again, Jun Woo thought, wait. This is actually a scene for two people. You kinda need a partner for it to work. And the star of the show was Gil Chuno. No way. Could it be? Was Chuno supposed to be his scene partner? He scanned a line. Let's try being a little happier every day. A weird thrill shot through him. Okay. Maybe, just maybe, this could actually be pretty fun. Jamu turned to the director, asking for another copy of the script. A surprised Jaman asked him what for. Jun Woo explained, he figured it'd be way better to get their timing just right with Mr. Gil Cherno. Director Jaman smirked at Jung Woo's words, amused by the boy's sheer audacity. In his mind, he noted the kid's guts, figuring it must be his youth that gave him such bold confidence. He politely responded to Jun Woo, stating that might be a little tricky. But before he could finish, Chuno jumped in, looking at Jun Woo and saying they should give it a go together, voice full of resolve. Chuno turned to the director, asking if there was an extra script for them. Director Jaman, totally blindsided by this, was just speechless, stunned by the sudden twist. He couldn't believe Chuno was really going to do a scene with this kid. Right here, right now. He wondered what in the world Chuno saw in Jun Woo to do this. And just like that, Chuno and Jun Woo began to act. Chuno launched into the scene, shouting with fire. He swore, all confusion and urgency, demanding some action, yelling at the other character for just standing there. His voice boomed through the room, setting the entire mood. Director Jaman watched, totally impressed. That's our Gil Chuno, he thought, with just a slight shift in his tone. Chuno was nailing the part of a 40-year-old guy. His vocal and emotional control made it feel so completely real. Jun Woo totally matched his energy, shouting back a line at the teacher, venting his own frustration. He called Chuno a punk, saying he was ticked off too. Chuno shot back that at least the teacher got younger. Unlike him, stuck as he was. He then dissed his own outfit, joking about the teacher's unique sense of style. Jun Woo, thrown for a loop, stammered style before he finally snapped back at him, asking if this was seriously the time for fashion critiques. He told Chuno they had to figure this whole mess out first. As Chuno kept acting, he picked up on something amazing. At first, he thought he was just hearing things. But then it hit him. Jamu had tweaked his tone just enough to sound like the middle schooler Chuno was playing. After hearing just a couple of lines, Jamu had instantly grasped Chuno's take on the character and matched it perfectly. Juno was totally floored. He jumped back into character, fuming. "Hey, why's this all my fault?" he snapped at Junwoo, swearing his innocence. Junwoo shot back. "Oh, so I guess it was my fault then." "Huh." Then he yelled, "Don't move. Don't you dare do anything crazy." Watching Junwoo, Juno was captivated. Those trembling fingers, that look of nervous resolve. How his voice would just fade. My God. Every single bit of it was pure genius. Every gesture, his intense gaze, each perfect move was so controlled. Even Juno, a total pro himself, was stunned, had to struggle to keep up, admitting that Junwoo had somehow managed to guide the entire vibe of the scene with just a script. Juno jumped in with his next line, asking what Junwoo's big plan was, pointing out that, as the teacher, he should have a clue. Junwoo, looking totally frayed, snapped back that he didn't know either. This whole mess was making him insane. Juno smirked to himself, seeing it now. This wasn't a one-man show, they were equals. Junwoo wasn't trying to steal the spotlight. If he had, Juno's part would have been totally eclipsed. Then Junwoo mentioned something about the sounds in their dialogue. How they just flowed together so perfectly. No over-the-top drama needed. It hit Juno, then what he'd said about this kid wasn't just talk, it was the absolute truth. Junwoo went on, saying he'd give a signal soon and told Juno to come back. And just like that, Huno, ending his part, coolly said, "I'll stop there." He thought about it. This back and forth was a world away from being solo on a stage. A grinning Junwoo said, "That was fun," and thanked him. Juno was floored. He times was the one who should be thanking Junwoo. He never dreamed a kid this young could pull so much out of him. He started imagining what it'd be like to really work with him on an actual project. Juno smiled. "I had a great time, too. I won't forget today." Meanwhile, director Jamon, completely blown away by the scene. He confessed it was way more than he ever expected. He was floored and tried to move on to the contract talks. But no one was listening. Huno, still lost in the moment, still buzzing from the scene, turned to Junwoo. "Did you change that second line on purpose?" Junwoo just nodded, admitting he had, too. Juno asked if, for a real take, he'd have changed the gesture too. Junwoo confirmed that he would have. He explained that for a shot like that, the camera would only see their upper bodies. So he played his gaze to the room. Normally, he'd have looked up. Director Jamon, however, was getting seriously annoyed. Getting totally ghosted at such a key moment was really ticking him off. Junwoo then calmly pointed out that Juno had a theater background. Hearing that out of nowhere, Juno was completely and utterly speechless. Later, Juno was seen pulling Manik into a private room. As Manik entered, he recognized the famous man before him, Jil Juno, the one and only star actor for NK Entertainment. He'd heard the improv earlier and was floored to realize it was Juno himself. He was thrilled he'd brought the kid. But Juno's serious face was making him sweat. Was Juno mad about Junwoo's cocky attitude? Then Juno just asked Manik, "Do you run a theater company?" Manik admitted he ran a little theater out in the sticks. Juno, ever the curious one, asked how many shows they were planning. Manik asked why the sudden interest. Juno confessed he was hoping he could maybe grace that very stage. Manik, totally floored, stammered the question again, in disbelief. The great Juno in his show Manik then asked about Juno's terms. He confessed he couldn't afford Juno's typical fee, especially since recent cancellations left the seats empty. Juno coolly replied that money wasn't a problem for him. He admitted he was craving something with a little more soul. This revelation left Manik absolutely speechless. He asked Juno if he'd already worked things out with the kid. Juno confirmed they'd just wrapped up their chat. Manik figured that in that case, everything should be smooth sailing. Juno paused, then asked if the kid had only ever worked at this theater. He just couldn't wrap his head around a talent like Jung Woo coming from such a small troupe. He quickly backpedaled, saying no offense was intended and sorry if that came out wrong. Manik totally got what he meant. He'd thought the exact same thing. He confessed, it's not like the kid worked here in the usual way. He admitted he didn't have all the details either. The kid mostly taught himself, just reading books and scripts. Juno was floored. From books and scripts all self-taught, he was reeling. All that talent Jun Woo just displayed was from studying alone. Manik explained that Jung Woo was just a natural, and that if you asked anyone, even the kid himself, you'd just end up with more questions. Anyway, he said he was really looking forward to working with Juno. Juno nodded with a slight smile, admitting the feeling was mutual. Then they shook hands, sealing the deal on this surprising new venture. Outside, Jun Woo was frozen in place, his gaze lost in a photograph for the longest time. His mind, though, was racing. A whirlwind of other images stormed through his head. Faded memories, quiet feelings, and moments he'd buried deep. And one scene kept replaying, the one where he performed on stage with Juno. Their performance still burned so brightly in his mind. As he was lost in the past, director Jamon came up to him, his voice firm yet worried. He reminded Jun Woo just how serious his decision was. Being in this production, he stressed, would unlock doors to chances you just don't find anywhere else. He asked if Jun Woo had truly considered what he was doing. You could hear the disappointment dripping from his words. Jamon admitted he'd never been this disappointed before. Still, he offered his support, telling Jun Woo that, if he needed any help with the show, or even had a change of heart, he should give him a call. And with that, director Jamon held out his business card. Jun Woo accepted it with a polite and resolved, absolutely. The scene cuts to the theater, where Manik was bustling about, prepping for Jun Woo and Juno's joint performance. As he put the finishing touches on everything, he felt a buzz of excitement. The idea of those two, together on a stage, was just unreal. Jung Woo came over and playfully questioned what Manik was up to, teasing that an employee should be doing all this work. Manik just waved it off, telling Jung Woo to go practice. Or even better, time for a break and some fun to recharge. As Jumansik came down a ladder, Jung Woo spotted a seriously busted step, a tiny thing that could be a huge problem. Manik then asked Jamu how he felt about the stage decorations, which were his personal project. Jamu retorted that he wasn't just spacing out and watching from the sidelines. He'd been absorbing every little detail. He asked if Manik had made the required tweaks for the next performance. Manik confessed he'd made a couple of changes. Jamu was genuinely surprised. It had slipped his mind. Maybe since he always saw Manik as a quiet admirer from the wings. But the real story was something else. This guy studied theater for ages and ran his own place. Seeing him work this hard made it obvious he had very high hopes for this show. Jung Woo saw the improvement and thought maybe he'd try his own hand at fixing a few things up later on. 2. Then Manik brought up something that he'd been wondering about, no matter how he spun it. He couldn't figure why Jun Woo would ditch Enki's offer, but agree to perform with Guild Juno. Enki offered scripts from famous writers and way more acting jobs than this tiny little theater could ever provide. Manik admitted he'd never really figured Jun Woo out before. But this time, he was dying to know. Jun Woo just said he didn't recall. So Manik started to tease him, asking if he'd turned down Enki because of him. Jun Woo dodged it, asking if Manik was hungry and wanted to grab breakfast. As they left, Manik playfully pointed out Jun Woo's sudden topic change, asking if he was for real, adding he'd have kimchi stew. Then he asked what Jun Woo was in the mood for. We cut to Jun Woo and Juno running lines. Jun Woo gave precise directions while Juno furiously scribbled down notes. From afar, Jumansik watched them, his thoughts swirling around in his head. He wondered if Juno was really into the stage or just obsessed with something else entirely. To an outsider, the scene could have been lifted right out of a play. Yet, Manik didn't expect to see Juno until the day of the actual performance. A memory from that week popped into Manik's head. Juno had rented a place close by just for practicing, every single morning. He'd be at the theater, even before Manik arrived, and never looked tired at all. It was more than just rehearsing. Juno seemed to genuinely love vibing with Jun Woo and talking about acting. It was a nice change. Back to the present. Manik saw Juno lingering in the theater, totally lost in it. He got curious and whispered to Jung Woo why Juno hadn't bounced yet. Jungwoo whispered back that he didn't know, as they watched Juno sit there, looking so tense. Manik asked if he was always this wound up. Jung Woo shot back a question of his own. What do you mean by always? Manik clarified. Does he always have that pained look on his face while he's practicing? Jung Woo admitted that. Well, sometimes he did. Manik chuckled. He confessed that at first he thought Juno was a stick in the mud. But he was way friendlier than he expected. After some very intense days, reading scripts, and taking notes, Juno finally asked Jungwoo to review his lines. Then the scene snapped right back to the present. Junwoo told Junho that repeating his lines like a broken record wasn't helping. Even if he performed the lines exactly as Junwoo saw them, it still wouldn't come out the same way. Juno needed to find his own meaning. Hearing this, Juno was truly blown away. From a quiet corner, Ju Manik listened in, feeling a new kind of spark between them. Time flew by, and as the big performance day got closer, preparations were in the final stretch. But one huge issue remained. Ju Manik was casting his play. The chaser from the outskirts, Gil Jono, was set to play the lead. Detective Annan, the supporting role, went to Seeing Hyun-jun and role B to Kim Chiang. However, the role of the fugitive, Pavel, was still mysteriously unassigned, a gaping hole waiting to be filled. Soon, Ju Manik dropped the play's title and the cast list on social media. As expected, the internet basically exploded. Comments flooded the post. One user was absolutely buzzing, saying that after months of waiting, they'd see Gil Juno, but griped that the venue was in some rural backwater. Another fan was losing their mind, saying they had been waiting an eternity for this, and now they finally have a chance to see Gil Juno up close. Even if there are no prior reviews or real-life accounts about the performance, among the mix of voices, one comment stood out in support, stating that with Gil Jono's powerful vocal projection, he could totally own the entire theater space. Reading all these reactions, Ju Manik smirked, as expected. The buzz was huge, thanks to Gil Juno's star power. Guno, who'd previously only worked in films directed by A-list filmmakers, was now on a tiny stage, and naturally, that made major headlines. In a way, Ju Manik was relieved by Juno's fame. The more sensitive, tricky issues were getting buried under all the hype, but not all comments were positive. Some users noted that the co-star role still hadn't been cast yet. From the plot, people figured the missing role was for a child actor. Others just mocked the situation, joking that Jono's star power was so huge, he might as well just do the whole play by himself. With only 1 week until showtime, Ju Manik was getting nervous. They couldn't hit the stage without a full cast announcement. This worry followed him all the way to the theater. When he got there, he just stopped and stared in awe. The stage before him was sparkling, far beyond his wildest dreams. It looked like it belonged in a grand venue. He could hardly believe it was the same place. The stage was cleaned and decked out more beautifully than ever before. And Jamu had done it all. Spotting Manik, Jamu casually asked what he was doing there so late. Manik, still stunned, asked what all this was. Jamu asked if he didn't like it. But Manik rushed to say there was no way he didn't love it. In fact, he couldn't believe it was his own theater. As Manik stood there, he thought to himself that, though small, the stage looked just like a national theater. All his days reading, directing books had not been wasted. Nothing expensive had been added to the set. Yet the atmosphere felt so rich and alive. Jamu told him he just added a few touches to what was there, and that he wasn't just sitting around doing nothing this whole time. Manik glanced around, deep in thought on a stage just like this. And in that very moment, after all this time, Jung Woo casually swept his hair back. Manik froze. He saw something that had been hiding in plain sight. Jung Woo was suddenly, devastatingly handsome and charismatic. Stunned, he asked Jun Woo if he'd been hiding this charm all along. He demanded to know why Jun Woo always hid that gorgeous face. Jun Woo thought to himself, it was because of his old job. He'd always made a point of not being noticed. It never even crossed his mind to show his true self. It was clear Manik had been thinking about him a lot. And a pang of guilt hit Jung Woo. He knew this time was a whole other beast compared to that tiny show they did for fewer than 20 people. The stakes were so much higher. He was in way too deep to back out now. Thinking of how he'd hidden away all this time just made him furious with himself. Manik, full of sudden courage, announced he'd take the blame for whatever chaos they were about to cause. He told himself it was time to live the life he actually wanted. This felt like a second chance he'd been miraculously given. Then a thought hit him, and he asked Jung Woo if he was really all right. Jung Woo reassured him, saying he was fine and wouldn't cause any drama. Manik, totally spooked, wondered how Jung Woo always knew what he was thinking. Sometimes Jung Woo was creepier than a ghost with that mind-reading trick. Manik then pitched an idea. If Jung Woo wanted, they could invent some mysterious masked persona for him. A way to be on stage, but stay anonymous. But the second the words left his mouth, Manik instantly regretted it. He heard how dumb the idea sounded and cringed at himself. Jun Woo just calmly replied that none of that mattered anymore. But Manik was freaking out. He asked, it really doesn't matter. Could it really be that simple? He warned Jun Woo he could end up on the nightly news. With interview clips going viral all over the place, Jun Woo simply said that nothing's worse than being dead. He was completely over-caring about the attention. Stunned, Manik asked if he was for real. Jung Woo confirmed he was. He didn't want this opportunity to just vanish. In fact, he'd be bummed if it did. And with that, Jung Woo showed he was all in and ready to go forward. Manik told him not to sweat the small stuff and just own the stage. He swore he would handle everything else. If nothing else, he would make damn sure nothing bad happened to Jung Woo for performing at his theater. And then, he took to social media. Manik finally dropped the bombshell. He announced the name of the lead actor for Fugitive Pavel and the Chaser from the Outskirts. The name blew everyone's minds. The mystery lead was the one and only Han Jun Wu. The internet absolutely exploded with excitement. The long-awaited opening night of The Chaser from the Outskirts was finally here. The theater was absolutely crammed with a sea of people. And most of them were there just to see Gil Juno. From backstage, Manik could hear the electric buzz of the excited audience. A voice in the crowd said it had been ages since Gil Juno was on stage. Someone else chimed in, agreeing, saying that just seeing him up there could make fans pass out. Another person couldn't believe how crazy ticketing was, wondering how a tiny theater like this even managed to book Gil Juno. Another was practically vibrating with joy, saying they'd waited ages to see him and were just swooning. Hearing this, Manik thought to himself that, as expected, it was all about Gil Juno. Being with him at rehearsals, he'd gotten used to the star power. But seeing it now, witnessing the crowd's reaction, he finally got how big a deal Gil Juno was. Then he caught a few more whispers. Some were shocked at how chic this little theater looked. Another fan added, they'd never seen a stage quite like this one. Most small venues have the same old boring sets. But this one, the second they walked in, felt like a spooky, abandoned mine date. The lighting was all moody and perfect. These comments made Manik crack a tiny smile. The scene cut to the actor's dressing room. Jia Wu was staring into a mirror, gazing at his reflection like it was a handsome stranger. Just then, Manik came to get him. But seeing Jung Woo's new look, He was totally floored and couldn't even speak. Soon, the show started. The curtains rose on the Outlander chaser. The tale began 10 years ago, when a detective lost his family and a leg to one guy. From that moment on, a super dramatic, bitter chase was on. Tangled in this mess by pure bad luck was Pavel. A runaway swept into the drama. Jill Juno played Anton, a man with some serious, deep-seated anger issues. Han Jun Wu was Pavel, our guy with wrongful jail time and angst. What came next was a wild goose chase packed with sneaky tricks and plot twists. The truth was a slippery little thing, and the characters' hidden feelings were the real heart of the drama. As metal clanged, Jill Juno entered. He stood there, all tall and dramatic, pointing out that this was where the scoundrel had been hiding out. It was finally time for the big finale. 10 years had gone by. An eternity for some, but just a blink for him. His voice was a force of nature, his words so sharp. The audience was instantly hooked. Of course, Gil Juno was in a league of his own. Even with just his voice, viewers were freaking out, whispering how amazing he was. Some confessed they'd never stopped thinking about him. Not for one moment. One guy couldn't help himself and started filming. His friend warned him off, but he just ignored her, saying, "If not now, when will I see Gil Juno live?" A fair point. On stage, Juno went on, remembering the day he'd randomly bumped into the man he'd been hunting for so long. Even Jumanik was a little starstruck. Had Gil Juno always been this ridiculously talented? He realized Juno was playing in a whole different ballpark. The audience was absolutely buzzing with excitement. They all agreed that a true pro is just on another planet. Many swore they'd buy tickets again. Gil Juno's charisma was hypnotic. As Juno's intense speech wrapped up, Jumanik figured the audience probably thought the best part was over. Gil Juno had completely owned the stage. But then, a new voice rang out. "You made me a monster. And you're one too." The line belonged to Jun Wu. His entrance made the audience gasp. He was meant to be a 17-year-old boy, but his vibe on stage felt so much older. It was kind of spooky. Jun Wu slowly uncovered his face, asking if it was all okay. His expression, finally revealed, was absolutely terrifying. A crazy mix of hurt and fury, hiding his boyish charm. The women in the audience literally jumped. The whole mood shifted. Jumansk saw the theater's crush on Jun Wu begin. He was no mere teen now. The entire audience held its breath. All eyes were glued to Jun Wu. The plot was peaking. Old Chunao whipped his head toward Jung Wu, asking if he really thought he could just hide it all. The proof might be buried. But the person wasn't. The jig was officially up. He had to drop the act. Jun Wu, in turmoil, clutched his hair and bent over, screaming in a voice soaked with agony and desperation. He kept insisting over and over he wasn't that guy. He wasn't kidding. He was dead serious. Then, his pained face morphed into a spooky, demonic smirk. The whole crowd gasped, totally floored by the flip. They were frozen solid. Even Jumanik was shaken. Every line from Jung Wu sent a shiver down his spine. His aura was overpowering. At that very moment, Gil Juno's powerhouse show on the stage's left side basically became invisible. The audience, the backstage team, the MK staff, even Gil Juno's manager, every one of them was hypnotized by Jun Wu. All eyes were on him. No one could peel their eyes away. Then, the final scene ended. A roar of applause erupted. The actors hit the stage, dropping their roles to thank the crowd. But most eyes were still stuck on Jun Wu. People buzzed to each other, talking about his acting, his looks, even his name. Gil Chano felt the vibe change. For a very long time, he was so proud of his craft. He had always loved and revered the stage with his whole heart. But now, in this moment, all his pride, his awards, everything he had built started to feel a little cheap because the audience's gaze was no longer on him. They were all fixed on Han Jun Wu.